All right. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction and that old video. I think that was my senior year of high school doing a spoken word competition, so it's weird seeing me with braces. But anyway, so first giving honor to God, who is the head of my life, to the Bridge Church for allowing me to speak with you guys for a few minutes, to the youth, to the audience, good evening. Tonight, I have a few minutes with you, but I want tonight to be a night of interaction, engagement, and involvement, okay? So before I go any further, I want everybody to just wiggle everything out. Just shake around, get nice and loose. You good? You ready? You nice and warm? I know it's really cold outside. Before I go any further, I want to ask you guys a question. And the question is, how many of you like to be comfortable? By show of hands. So everybody in the room, right? We all like to be comfortable. So the next question I have for you is, how many of you like playing games? Card games, board games, video games, games with friends, sport games, just good games, right? Okay, so mostly everybody. So tonight, to start off, I have a quick and simple game for us to play. It's really easy. Basically, I give you two categories, and depending on which one you prefer, you either raise one hand or both hands. So, for example, if I say, if you prefer Five Guys, raise one hand, and if you prefer In-N-Out, raise both, and then you would just raise the amount of hands that you prefer. Make sense? Got it? Am I talking to myself? Got it? Whoa, okay, cool, let's get started. So the first one, if you prefer nature, raise one hand, and if you prefer the city, raise both hands. Okay, cool. I had to raise one hand on that because I'm a nature person. You can put your hands down. The second one, which I feel like may have a little bit of controversy, if you prefer DC Comics, raise one hand, and if you prefer Marvel, raise both hands. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Got the Hulk, Wolverine, the Avengers. I mean, you can't go wrong, right? Okay, so the next one. If you prefer Subway, raise one hand. Or if you prefer Jimmy John's, raise both hands. Really? Subway, you guys. Subway. The correct answer was one hand. Banana peppers. I mean, come on. You can't go wrong with that. Okay. All right, the next one is a little bit tricky because they kind of go hand in hand. If you prefer singing, raise one hand. Or if you prefer dancing, raise two hands. Yeah, see, this is the moment where I wish I had like three arms, like raise both hands and like a leg, because I like them both. Actually, since we're on the subject of music, I want you to turn to your neighbor, whoever you're sitting next to, and tell them your favorite genre of music and why it's your favorite. And I'll give you about 15 seconds. So ready, go. All right, and time. Let's focus our attentions back. I'm glad you guys were able to share. Congratulations, you have successfully completed the first phase of that game. Go ahead, give yourselves a round of applause. All right, so like I said, you complete the first phase, so that means there's bound to be a phase two, right? So the second phase of the game is just as simple. It's a little bit different, though. Instead of giving you two categories, I'm just going to give you one, and if it applies to you, then you just raise your hand. Now, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because the questions are going to be just a little bit more intense, and it's going to require us to be a little bit more open with ourselves and with one another. And so when I ask you these questions, if at any time you feel uncomfortable and don't wish to answer, you don't have to do so. Make sense? All right, let's begin. How many of you, by a show of hands, have ever been afraid of something, anything? Okay, me too. Scared of spiders, deathly afraid. Needles, yeah, put your hands down. Okay, how many of you, at any point in your life, have ever felt like you didn't know where your life was headed? I know that feeling of being lost is scary in itself. Okay, you can put your hands down. The next question is, how many of you, by show of hands, have ever stopped yourself from doing something that you believed to be amazing, or stopped yourself from being yourself because of fear or doubt or what others have thought about you? If that's you, raise your hand. Yeah, me too. All right, last question of the game. How many of you, by a show of hands, have ever pretended to be someone or to be something that you weren't? And I want you to just take a second, keep your hands in the air, and just look around the room. Look at all the lovely faces with their hands up. Okay, you can put your hand down. That concludes tonight's game. Unfortunately, there are no winners or prizes. But I decided to choose that game because, for one, I wanted us to get a little more acclimated with one another, get comfortable. But another reason why I chose that game is to show you that despite the fact that every detail in people's lives may not be the same, what you're going through, you aren't going through it alone. And you don't have to walk through life by yourself. And if you look at the results of that game that we just played, it'll show you that you are not the only one. Now, tonight's theme is about being unleashed, stepping away from who society says you are and walking in the fullness of who God created you to be. But in order to do that, I feel like there's a couple things that we have to do first. First, we have to let go of all the lies the world may tell us. The naysayers, the doubters, the haters, right? People say that you aren't good enough, that you aren't pretty enough, that you aren't smart enough, that what it is that you're trying to accomplish is just too great. We have to let go of what society says we need, although those same things may end up being the things that harm us the most. And to paint a picture of letting go, I wanted to use an illustration tonight, and the illustration has to do with raccoons. And I know that sounds weird. Give me a few minutes, it'll make sense here in a second. But this is a story that someone shared with me, so I wanted to share it with you all. Now, the story talks about how raccoons are persistent by nature. Once they've made their mind up and once they set their minds on a certain thing, they will literally die before letting go of one thing. So, in order to catch or trap that raccoon, which, by the way, I'm not advising anyone to go out and try to catch raccoons. They're dangerous. But in order to catch or trap a raccoon, you take an empty water bottle, and you take a piece of a sugar cube, and you stick it in the bottle, and you put it on your porch or your deck, right? And so the raccoon has flexible bones in its hand. And so the raccoon can take its hand and it can squeeze itself into the water bottle and take hold of that sugar cube. Now, here's where the trap comes into play. As the raccoon tries to retract its hand from the bottle, it can't because its hand is balled into a fist. Now, unfortunately, for the raccoon will risk starving to death, will risk being attacked by other animals, will even risk death because it does not want to let go of that sugar cube. Are you hearing me tonight? There are so many things in our lives right now in this very moment that may be harming us. Now, I don't know for you if it's physically or emotionally or mentally, financially, academically, socially, or maybe it's a little bit of everything. But whatever it is, we must take steps to let it go. We must open our hands in order to be free because that sugar is not worth the trap. Now, like I said, there's a couple things we have to do before we can take our lives to the next level until we can be unleashed and be ourselves, right? The first thing is letting go of all the negative. The second thing is having enough courage to take those beginning steps. And I remember I was a counselor at this youth camp a couple of summers back, and I met this little girl. She was like 9 years old. Britton was her name. I'll never forget. She changed my life. And we were sitting in the lunchroom. All the kids had finished eating. All the kids were either outside. There was a few inside still cleaning. And I was by myself at an empty table. It was still messy with crumbs. And could anyone guess what I was doing by myself at that table? I was overthinking. How many of us have ever overthought a situation? Right? Like you seriously start thinking about your life so much that it actually makes you sad? Well, that was me that day. And I was there questioning my entire existence because I knew deep in my bones that there was more to my life, That there was more than the excuses that I constantly fed myself. So as I sat there, spacing off, barely breathing, this little girl, Brittany, she comes up to me and she's cleaning the tables. And I should have been outside with other camp counselors, but instead I was in there by myself. And she asked me this question. She says, "What are you waiting for?" Can you believe that? Although she was talking about something completely different than what I was thinking about, her question cut right in the middle of my thoughts. So tonight, I'm asking you, as she asked me, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? What is stopping us when we know we are holding ourselves back? When we know we could be doing better? When we know we're not with the right crowd? When we know we aren't truly being seen? What is stopping us? We have to get to a place where we can ask that question, not only ask that question, but be able to answer it. And tonight, for the believer and the unbeliever in this room, I'm telling you that we cannot wait. We cannot afford to wait to step into the fullness of who He created us to be. Now, I can't speak for you, but for me personally, there are times in my life, seasons in which I go through hesitation. And in the midst of my hesitating, I tell myself, which actually, oddly enough, I did this while I was writing the speech. I was telling myself why I couldn't do something. You know, I was giving myself excuses why I couldn't do this, why I couldn't do that, why I couldn't be myself. And one day in the midst of my overthinking and doubting myself and putting myself down, God came to me and He said 2 words. He said, "Come anyway." And then I stopped and looked around the room and was like, no. I'm too doubtful. And He said, "Come anyway." I said, "Well, God, what about my past? What about my current situation, my current circumstance?" He says, "Come anyway." And so He kept saying that, and to be honest, I started getting mad. I was like, "See, God, you're not listening to me. What about my anger? What about my pain? What about my confusion? What about my doubt? What about my mess? What about my imperfections?" He said, "Come anyway. Come anyway." And that really sat with me. And it sat with me because at some point in our lives, we have to choose to live anyway. We have to choose to try anyway. In the midst of our battle, in the midst of our pain, in our struggle, in our doubt, we have to make the decision to be unleashed and to try and live anyway. And I'm going to be honest with you. Chances are you reaching your full potential, you change your life around. It won't happen in a day. It won't happen in a month. It may not even happen in a year. Yet we must start. We must start. And you may say, well, it's hard to start. But I want you to leave with those 2 things today. Letting go of what causes you pain, letting go of what's holding you back or what's weighing you down, and then being able to be courageous enough to take those steps. Everybody following along so good? So far, so good? Cool. I'm almost done. Just give me a few more minutes, okay? Tonight, I want to challenge you, because after this, you have another activity. So whether in that activity, whether you're at school, at work, hanging out, at home, whatever the case may be, I challenge you to just reevaluate your life. And I actually challenge you to make a list, to literally write down everything that's inside of you and that's around you in this world that may be weighing you down and holding you back. And after you've written that list, I dare you to take a step away from it. Take a step away from all those things you put in that list. And on that list, for every fear, for every doubt, for every unrealistic idea that you have for yourself, for every unrealistic expectation that you hold for yourself, in its place, I dare you to put words of encouragement. In its place, I dare you to speak life over yourself. In its place, I dare you to come up with a strategy, with a game plan in which you can propel your life forward. I dare you and I challenge you to step away from the group that's really not doing anything for you and to step into a support system who's going to help you get forward, who's going to help you live, who's going to help you reach your full potential. And like I said, it can be hard, but it can be done. It can be done. Because when you do all that you can, God will do all that you can't. And I'm going to say that again just in case anyone missed it. When you do all that you can in your life, God will do all that you can't. So tonight, lay aside every weight, lay aside every burden, and run desperately into your destiny. And I just want you to remember that it all starts with you. And through Christ, you are the hero. And that this is only the beginning. Much love, beautiful people. Thank you for your time.